trying to fulfill?
Well, in the early 90s, NASA was preparing to do a program, Earth Observing Systems, a fleet of polar orbiting Earth observatories that would generate huge amounts of data. The nice thing about them being polar orbiting is the thing they could see every orbit was the pole, or high latitudes. The problem that we encountered, that the only way we could think to get the data from Black Island to the United States was probably via NASA's Tracking and Data Relay satellite, which is geostationary above the equator. So we needed to get close enough to the poles to get the polar orbiting data every pass, and yet close enough to the equator so that you could see a geosynchronous satellite. And the closest place NASA Mike and I could probably propose was Black Island, where he had done communications in the past. So we put together a proposal and took it down to NASA headquarters that showed a station on Black Island doing 300 million bits per second up to Tidris and back to White Sands, New Mexico. No one really wanted to pursue this at length unless we could prove it would work. So we volunteered to put together a crew and go down with a prototype Tidris Earth station, 2-meter dish and KU band transmitter, and actually broadcast 300 million bits per second from Black Island via Tidris to White Sands. Therefore, they knew that if they could get that volume of data from the Antarctic, they could unload these Earth observing spacecraft image data, millions of bits per second, to the Antarctic, and then from the Antarctic back to White Sands, New Mexico. So that was the reason we chose that location and went there. So I had been to the Antarctic with NASA Mike before, so I volunteered to work on that endeavor. And they gave me 2 of my support service contractors who were experts in tracking and data relay satellite, a Mike Lewis and a Darwin Smith. And they put together a test setup, and we ran it at Goddard several times, and the National Science Foundation came out to watch us run it and try to understand if it was worth giving up a slot to let us come down there and try this. It's very hard to get slots with the National Science Foundation. There's so much worthwhile science that they're all used up. So you want to be sure something you bring there is very valuable. From our past experience, they agreed that this looked successful, and center management have backed us and came out and reviewed it and said it would probably succeed. So we put together all the equipment that was necessary and channeled it through the National Science Foundation, flew it down through New Zealand, and from there through with LC-130s into McMurdo Station, and from there we took all the crates and hooked them on the bottom of helicopters and flew them out to Black Island. And from Black Island you could see both 2 Tidrises just at 3 degrees above the horizon. We knew we had a very limited amount of time because of the weather. We were sort of unprotected with this prototype setup, just set out there and in the elements and see if it would work. We actually did want to try snow and all to see if it would attenuate the signal. So we set up the 2-meter dish, about 6 feet in diameter, along with a complete RF test setup. And Darwin Smith and Mike Lewis sighted in the spacecraft, which turned out to be right on, with a little caliper that you sighted the antenna with, and transmitted back to White Sands, New Mexico. We could correspond with them over S-band, but we transmitted the data on KU band and at 300 million bits per second, and White Sands received it with a bit error rate of 10 to the minus 5 to 10 to the minus 6, depending on the conditions there, which was absolutely successful. The whole experiment was a total success. The experts that we had knew the equipment perfectly, so there was no time wasted. We did get a chance to go through a fairly significant snowstorm, which was worthwhile. It did not attenuate the data. And we packed up and flew out via helicopter as fast as we could finish the test, and as soon as we left, the winds had reached a level where we would not have survived sitting out in the open. However, since it was such a success later on, a permanent station was built there enclosed in a ray dome and away from the elements, so that it's been working ever since, but that was proof that the prototype system was a success.